This is Pavan Sukhdev of Corporation 2020 at the headquarters of Grupo Abril, the Brazilian language publisher of Corporation 2020. I am delighted today to be with a very special person. Jose Penido is not just the chairman of Fibria Cellulose, he's not just the chairman of the Brazilian Pulp and Paper Association, Braselpa, but he's also the co-chair of the Forestry Solutions Group of the World Business Council for Sustainable Development. Jose, it's great to have you here with us at Abril, and so good that you made time to discuss Corporation 2020, which is not just a book, but it's a campaign.
Thank you very much, Pavan. It's my pleasure to be here.
And of course, apart from your work as chairman of Fibria, which is your company, and your work as chairman of the Pulp and Paper Association in Brazil, Braselpa, you also co-chair the Forest Solution Group at World Business Council for Sustainable Development.
Yes.
WBCSD, as it's called, has this Vision 2050. And sometimes I wonder that so many changes are happening, so many planetary boundaries are being approached at speed. Climate 2020 is a date that keeps coming up. Ocean acidification, coral reefs, phosphorus, and so on. I just wonder, will we be able to look at a horizon beyond 2020, or do we have the time to actually think 2050? What is your view on this?
I think, Pavan, that the Vision 2050 is a very powerful idea because it's a way to show to the society, to business, that it's possible to create a desirable world. Let's say the Vision 2050 says that we, in 2050, will be 9 billion people living well and within the limits of the planet. 9 billion people living well and within the limits of planet. This is possible. And to achieve this, yes, you are right, we should think step by step.
Yes.
So people may consider 2050 too far away in the future, too distant to be committed. So we are now really discussing internally in WBCSD what are the must-haves for 2020.
Could you give me some of the ideas that you have for your company over what we may call the tactical short term? What directional changes you want to achieve during that time, reducing the externalities?
In Brazil, we don't touch any native tree to produce pulp and paper.
Pulp and paper, excellent.
We plant the trees that will be harvested 6-7 years later.
Right.
So, and we don't devastate natural ecosystems to create the plantations. Unfortunately, in the old economical cycles, Brazil generates some relevant impact, generating some anthropic destruction of native forests, mainly the Atlantic forest. So what we are doing now is the reforestation of areas already impacted decades ago, and we are doing this in such a way that we call the new generation plantations. We plant in mosaics, protecting the water flows. In Brazil, we call this the areas of permanent preservation.
Right.
We also plant in such a way that we promote ecological corridors for fauna and for the integration of the native vegetation. In general, we preserve 30 to 40% of the areas as native vegetation and the balance being trees. Trees that are increasing productivity using the same limited resource of land and water, because these are critical. For instance, my company, Fibria, set a long-term goal for the year 2025 that calls to an increase of 50% in productivity for the same area.
Wow.
Now we are we are producing 10 tons of pulp for each hectare per year. So we are managing the technology to produce 15. This means a demand of 1/3 less land to produce the same amount,
or more output,
or 50% more output for the same area.
That's excellent.
So these are, let's say, targets of innovation, of technology, to do well our responsibility.
And is waste reduction also one of your goals over the same period, 2025? Because in addition to managing land better so that you have reduced impacts, improved biodiversity impacts and higher yield, managing waste again can be positive or negative.
In the industry, you are right. Waste generation is very relevant. And you can see if the more we reduce the waste, the more competitive we will be.
We become, yes.
So it's a direct goal to our competitiveness, but on the other hand, good for nature. So my company set a goal to reduce in 15 years 94%. So we are now producing, for each ton of pulp we produce, we generate 65 kilos of waste, permanent waste, and the goal is to produce no more than 4 kilos in the year 2025.
So 4 kilos out of 1 ton.
Out of 1 ton.
Which is almost eliminating the waste.
Almost eliminating. Unfortunately, we cannot promise to go to zero, but one day we will reach there.
Yes. So managing externalities is one part of Cooperation 2020, but creating community, involving community is another. So tell us a bit about
because some communities may consider that we are just producing one sort of product. Let's say planting one tree for just one application, just to produce paper. So what we do is the following: we integrate agriculture with trees and with cattle raising. So we can plant trees in such a way that along between the lines we plant crops. And after 2-3 years, the trees will grow and will generate shadow, jeopardizing the productivity of agriculture. In this moment, we introduce cattle. And for the landowner, this is the best combination of incomes.
And has this made a change in the attitude of local communities towards Fibria?
Certainly. I can give you a good example.
Please.
For instance, we had 4 years ago a very negative moment when the landless movement that used to be very aggressive against our industry, they rushed into our technological center in south of Brazil, destroying everything. Let's say aiming to fight against the monoculture. And this was 4 years ago.
That's not that far ago.
Not that far ago. We came together. We are business leaders. We are not NGOs, social NGOs, but we start with a very positive dialogue, trying to find common land, common ground. And we found that this combination of agriculture, forestry, and cattle raising and family production makes all sense for them. So now Fibria has a very relevant project for 1,000 families in Bahia, called biodiversity and
sustainable settlements.
Yes. And doing so, we have in the middle of the settlement, we have a agroforestry school, educating the young leaders of the MST, the landless movement, that used to be, let's say, fighters. Now we are kissing each other's face, very happy, working together.
Cooperation 2020 is really a new way of doing business, a way in which the corporation recognizes the role of the community and enhances it, in which it invests in human beings, its employees and the employees of its suppliers, to give them higher skills, in which it focuses on natural capital as public wealth and does what it can to increase public wealth, and where the goals of this corporation are aligned with society. What you're describing, Jose, is very much a corporation of that nature. But achieving it will need some help from government in terms of correct regulations for taxation, correct regulation for subsidies, correct regulation for financial reporting. How do you see the role of the government in making these changes? Because you are a leader, but the question is, will there be followers? Will others follow the same model? Why should they, unless the rules ask them to? What do you think of that?
This is the sort of thing that we are now discussing on BRSELPA, on WBCSD.
Right.
How to influence government and society to change the focus of the incentives.
Right.
Incentives sometimes is not only giving, let's say, special financial conditions for one industry or others. Sometimes it's let's say, how we orientate the focus of innovation in universities, how we educate people. So I think that many countries have to generate reorientate the way they incentivize certain industries.
But then in that case, would you not feel that introducing eco-certification or introducing eco-labeling on pulp and paper and other forest products, doesn't that become an essential goal of government rules and regulations?
Yes, but this has been, the eco-label has been much more a market demand than a governmental demand. For instance, the two major forest certification systems called FFC and PEFC are, let's say, spontaneous systems.
Right.
We volunteer for that. And year by year, consumers will generate their preference and play their preference. I think this is really important. In Brazil, there is a very interesting discussions going on led by BRSELPA, integrating big NGOs like WWF, TNC, Conservation, SOS Mata Atlântica, and others. But also the stock exchange market of São Paulo, the Brazilian Development Bank, so universities, all these trying to create a volunteer project, a volunteer market for carbon. Let's say this will be possibly a post-Kyoto agreement, and I think that society will find localized solutions.
You know, you remind me of a saying by Winston Churchill that he said, "I'm an optimist because being anything else is useless." And I see your orientation to action and being useful and looking for solutions. And I'm so delighted that you and your company are moving forward.
Peter Bucket, that is the CEO of WBCSD, is now deeply committed for the group of companies, different group of companies in WBCSD, to generate a short-term plan
for that,
for deliverables.
Excellent.
What we should deliver as industries, as group of industries by the year 2020. And possibly this will generate another plan later for 2030, 2040, in such a way that by 2050, that dream of people living well within the limits of planet will be feasible.
And I look forward to your share in that dream.
I am optimistic.
Thank you very much for being with us today.
Thank you, Pavan. It was a great pleasure.